Under the pale light of an Alaskan dawn, Lieutenant Commander Aaron Hale's breath fogged in the air, a thin ghost dissolving into the cold. The wind hissed across the ridge like a living thing, cutting through layers of gear and grit. She gave the signal for ascent, controlled, measured, precise. Her unit responded with the same rhythm she had drilled into them for months. In these heights, hesitation could kill, and Hale's team trusted her without question. Or at least, she believed they did. Now, before we show you what happened next inside that Alaskan command tent, hit that like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because after this, no one on that base ever underestimated a Navy SEAL again. Halfway up the rope, the world cracked. Not a gunshot, something deeper. A sharp snap echoed against the cliffs, followed by weightlessness. The rope whipped past her hands, the sky spun, and then came the sound no one forgets, the hollow silence before impact. When she hit the ice shelf below, her vision exploded into white. Pain didn't come right away. Shock built a slow cage around her senses. Then it hit. Both legs gone silent, bones splintered beneath her skin. The mountains swallowed the echo of her scream. Snow drifted down like ash. Above, heads peered over the ledge, faces small and frozen. One voice shouted for rescue protocol. Another hesitated. The rest just stared, unsure whether to climb down or radio up. Minutes stretched into hours before they reached her. When they finally carried her back to base, the air in the tent felt wrong. Too quiet, too heavy. She caught the glances exchanged between two men she'd once trusted. Their words were low, just enough to cut through the hum of heaters. "She's done," one muttered. "A SEAL who can't stand can't lead." Hill didn't answer. She just stared past them, jaw locked, eyes steady. Pain had found her body, but betrayal had already found her mind. The hum of fluorescent lights never stopped. It was the sound she woke to, the sound she fell asleep to, and sometimes she wondered if it was just inside her head now. An endless, sterile drone replacing the rhythm of ocean waves and helicopter rotors. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Hale lay motionless in the hospital bed, her legs encased in steel braces that looked more like a trap than a cure. The doctors told her she'd walk again, maybe even jog with enough therapy. But then came the second sentence, the one that hit harder than any fall. "You'll never deploy again." The words were clean, professional, merciless. Her commanding officer came once. His visit lasted less than 5 minutes. He stood by the bed, reading from a clipboard instead of meeting her eyes. A reassignment order, rehabilitation unit, indefinite. When he left, the door shut with a click that sounded like a verdict. She didn't try to stop him, didn't ask why. The silence was easier to manage than disappointment. Days melted into weeks, time measured not by sunlight, but by sound. Hale started noticing patterns. The shuffle of nurses' shoes told her the shift change. The soft hiss of 4 drips became background tempo. The distant metallic clicks of walkers from other patients. Each one mapped itself in her mind like coordinates on a grid. When movement was gone, observation became her weapon. Every whisper, every pause, every vibration of the floor told her more about control than any debrief ever had. Rumors trickled in like static over a broken radio. The rope had been tampered with, they said. 2 men, maybe 3, jealous of her command. She listened, never reacting, never confirming. Her silence grew heavier with each passing day, not as surrender, but as camouflage. Because when a soldier can't move, she learns to listen. And when she listens long enough, she learns exactly when to strike. The first time she moved, it wasn't heroic. It was desperate. The room was quiet except for the soft beep of monitors and the whistle of the heating vent. Hale stared at the ceiling until the pain in her legs felt like fire trapped under glass. Then, slowly, she swung her upper body sideways, gripping the edge of the bed with both hands. Her arms trembled from weeks of stillness. The braces made her legs feel like anchors, but she ignored them. With one push, she slid herself off the mattress and hit the cold tile floor with a thud that knocked the air from her chest. She waited, listening for approaching footsteps. Nothing. The nurses were at shift change. She began to crawl, inch by inch, dragging herself forward. Her palms burned. The friction tore the thin hospital gloves she'd stolen from the supply cart. Each movement sent needles of pain shooting up her legs, but pain was information, proof she was still alive. She made it halfway across the room before her arms gave out. Her forehead rested against the floor, and she laughed under her breath, a sound no one else would have recognized as victory. The next night, she tried again. This time, she made it to the bathroom door, then to the hallway. She memorized every creak in the tiles, every corner that echoed differently, every shadow that could hide her. The hospital became a training ground, each wall a terrain obstacle, each inch of progress a silent act of rebellion. Weeks passed. She began to crawl faster, then quieter. She tied towels together to create resistance bands. She filled an old duffel with sand from the rehab garden and dragged it behind her as she moved. Her arms hardened, her shoulders expanded, her breath found rhythm. The nurses thought she slept early now. They never suspected that beneath the still sheets of her bed, she was staging her own war. Every night ended with the same whispered mantra, words spoken through clenched teeth and dry lips. If I can crawl, I can fight. If I can fight, I can win. Her body trembled, but her mind rewired itself around the pain. What the world saw as broken, she was turning into armor. The crawl wasn't weakness anymore. It was evolution. When Hale stepped off the transport plane, the air at the base felt different, thinner, colder, heavy with the kind of silence that only follows unspoken judgment. The men in formation straightened at the sight of her crutches, not out of respect, but disbelief. The woman they'd buried in whispers and pity had returned. The titanium braces glinted faintly under her fatigues as she walked past them, slow, deliberate, each movement a declaration that she still existed. No ceremony, no speech, just the faint echo of metal on concrete as she crossed the tarmac. Her commanding officer greeted her with a stiff nod. "Good to have you back, Lieutenant Commander," he said, but the tone betrayed the words. She was marked now, filed under non-combat personnel, a box where broken soldiers went to fade quietly. Hale only nodded. She understood the game. Power was never in the paperwork, it was in the patience. In the barracks, she found familiar faces. Some smiled too wide, their eyes darting away when hers lingered too long. Others avoided her completely, guilt wearing the shape of indifference. One of them, the same man who'd laughed when she fell, whispered to another, "Guess the hero's walking again." She heard it. She always heard everything now. But instead of answering, she smiled. "Good to see you too," she said softly, and kept walking. She smiled. "Good to see you too," she said softly, and kept walking. Weeks passed. Hale followed orders, filed reports, observed drills. To them, she looked calm, detached, like someone who'd accepted her limits. But beneath the calm, she was listening again. Every insult, every careless chuckle, every sound of boots she could recognize in her sleep. Then came the announcement, the annual tactical endurance evaluation. The one test no one volunteered for unless they wanted to bleed. The room went silent when her name appeared on the sign-up sheet. A few laughed. A few looked away. "She won't make it past the first wall," someone muttered. Hale overheard, as expected, but she wasn't joining to climb walls. She'd already learned how to move through obstacles most of them couldn't even imagine. At night, as she lay in her bunk, the corners of her lips curved slightly. They thought she was here to survive the test. They were wrong. She was here to redefine it. The world was white and cruel that morning. Snow drifted down in a silent curtain, masking breath and judgment alike. The tactical endurance evaluation began with a horn's echo rolling through the valley, fading into the hiss of wind and the crunch of boots against ice. Lieutenant Commander Erin Hale stood at the starting line, her crutches buried halfway into the slush. The men to her left smirked. One whispered, "She won't make it past the wire." Hale didn't respond. She adjusted her gloves, looked at the frozen horizon, and let the world blur into rhythm. Breath in, breath out, focus. When the whistle blew, they surged forward. Hale followed last, her crutches sinking deeper into the mud with every step until the weight of futility pulled her still. Then, she did something none of them expected. She let the crutches fall. The sound of metal striking ice echoed like a shot. She lowered herself onto the ground, palms pressing into the cold earth, and began to crawl. The laughter came immediately, but it faded, slowly, replaced by disbelief. Under the barbed wire, she crawled low, her breath puffing into frost as the metal tore at her sleeves. In the ice trench, her arms trembled, her muscles screaming as she dragged her body forward one pull at a time. She felt the blood on her palms before she saw it, bright against the snow. Each movement was a negotiation with pain, but pain had long since lost its power over her. Checkpoint after checkpoint, the field thinned. Men who started with pride now stumbled. Their strength was in their legs, not their will. Hale passed 2 of them at the 3rd obstacle, her eyes fixed ahead, not in defiance, but in purpose. She wasn't racing anyone else. She was racing the woman who once thought she'd never move again. By the final stretch, her body was more wound than form. Torn fabric, shaking arms, bloodied gloves. But her breathing stayed steady, measured like sniper fire. When she crossed the finish line, silence fell over the base. No one laughed. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to howl or bow. Her commanding officer approached, boots crunching against the snow. He looked down at her, covered in ice and grit, her hands trembling but still planted firmly in the earth. "Lieutenant Commander Hale," he said quietly, "why didn't you quit?" Hale lifted her head, eyes calm, voice steady. "Because crawling forward," she said, "is still forward." And with that, she pushed herself upright, not standing, not kneeling, but rising in her own way, defined not by what was broken, but by what refused to break. The report came quietly, slipped under a door like a secret no one wanted to own. Weeks after the endurance trial, the base's internal affairs team reopened the file on Hale's accident. There had been inconsistencies, statements that didn't align, timing that didn't add up. And now, a new lab analysis. The rope from the ridge had been cut, not frayed. A clean slice. A blade's work, not ice or chance. The air in the command tent turned heavy when the findings were read aloud. 2 names appeared in the final paragraph. Men who'd once stood in her unit. Men who had laughed too easily and looked away too fast. The same ones who'd whispered that her fall was bad luck. They were summoned to face the panel. The entire base seemed to pause that morning, caught between shock and shame. Hale was invited to attend. She entered the room in silence, her limp barely noticeable now, her posture unwavering. The men avoided her eyes, though she didn't seek theirs. The commanding officer asked if she wished to speak, to submit a personal statement. She shook her head. Then, quietly, he asked, "Lieutenant Commander Hale, do you wish to press charges?" The room waited. Her gaze was steady, voice even. "No, sir," she said. "They've already seen what justice looks like." No one asked what she meant. They all knew. Justice wasn't a courtroom verdict or a dishonorable discharge. It was watching the woman they'd broken crawl her way back past them, 1 inch at a time. It was hearing her name whispered again in respect instead of ridicule. The men were dismissed from service that day. No ceremony, no salute, just silence. As Hale left the tent, the same soldiers who once mocked her stepped aside, eyes lowered. Power, she thought, was never loud. That night, she returned to her quarters. The world outside was still, the snow drifting gently against the glass. She sat before her mirror, the lights soft and cold, and from a small envelope withdrew a single piece of rope, the one cut from her line in Alaska. With careful precision, she taped it to the mirror's edge. It wasn't vengeance. It was memory, a marker of evolution, proof that what crawls doesn't always stay low. Sometimes it learns to rise in ways no one else can follow. They thought breaking her legs would end her story. They thought pain could silence purpose, that a body shattered meant a will defeated. But that's not how Navy SEALs are built, and it's not how real strength works. Because when the world takes away your ability to stand, it dares you to find another way forward. And she did, inch by inch, breath by breath, until the ground that once buried her became the path that carried her. Maybe her story isn't just about a soldier in the snow. Maybe it's about all of us, the moments when life breaks something inside you, and you start believing that broken means done. But what if that's the lie? What if you don't have to stand to keep moving? What if victory begins the moment you decide to crawl anyway? Think about it. How many times have you told yourself you can't go on because you lost something? Your strength, your faith, your chance. What if you were never meant to stop, just meant to move differently? The world doesn't care how you move. It only sees whether you keep moving. So if you'd crawl toward your goal no matter what, type crawl forward in the comments. Let it be a reminder, not just for her story, but for your own. Because forward is forward, no matter how you get there. And next time, We'll tell you about the SEAL who was ordered to stand down and stood up anyway.